people
But
think
neither does the local community. I mean, when gravel is not burnable, and we live in the Northeast, somewhere we've got to get energy in the winter, and somewhere we've got to get energy for electricity, and somewhere we've got to get energy for hot water, all right? Now, we can put our head in the sand and say, we'll get it from some other country, some other state, and they can have the environmental problems, and we don't have a moral problem with that. They can have the headaches. If they screw it up, that's their business. I don't feel any moral compunction about that. I'm sorry, that doesn't wash with me. If I'm going to use gas or oil or nuclear or anything else, and we've got it here, let's do it right here. Let's show them the way. But we seem to have lost the can-do mentality of this country, which is now it's just stop, stop, ban, ban, negative, negative, back off, defensive everything, instead of what are the problems? Let's get by the ideology. What's the real data? And that's why I agree with Ed. Let the data drive it, and let's talk about the data. Let's put aside our ideology and say, okay, hydrofracking has problems. We know it.
And Mr. Bishop, you're a scientist.
It has some problems.
I mean, you know
but there
that
are
you're supposed to
solutions.
look at the data and then,
well, sure, and so I'd like to actually ask you a question in that.
Sure.
Andrea. What's the rationale for compulsory integration with shale and tight sands?
well, you know,
Because you
Go ahead,
really are
Chris, you
a
can-
real
Let
geologist.
me answer this one.
Oh, okay.
I've done over 50 compulsory integrations.
he is the expert in compulsory integration.
All right.
And there is no rationale, because the statute is based on the belief that shale was never going to be drilled. It's based on the belief that gas is fugitive. It passes unfreely from pore space to pore space, and that the pore spaces that you recovered from are large enough that there will be a flow from the greater concentration to the lesser pressure, and this is not an issue. And you really do have to have compulsory integration or forced pooling of something to compensate, because the law of capture says, in absence of forced pooling or compulsory integration, if you drill a well on your property and you put 6 wells along your line, and I don't put any, you can suck all the gas and oil out of my property, and I can't do anything about it, except to put 6 wells along mine.
And what I'd
That's
add to
that's
that,
rule of capture, now modified by Article 23. And
Well, yeah,
Section
and
and I'd
0901.
add geologically, if you look, you know, I think your question was aiming at the fact that compulsory integration is not as problematic in the tight shales, because the only way to get the gas out is to frack it, and that can be localized, so then compulsory integration is not an issue. Well, I would say, I don't know if I buy onto that, Mr. Bishop, or Dr. Bishop, and the reason why, if we look at a production curve for a typical oil and gas well, you'll notice that the curve starts up high, and then as the gas comes out over time, it tapers off. You know, one of the reasons for that is what we call free gas. Even though this gas in the tight shales has to be liberated by hydrologic fracturing, that's not to say that there's not natural fractures in that rock that have gas within them that can be taken out if you just drill. And that's a reason why you don't need to, these shales, although they need to be hydrofractured to liberate all the gas within the pore spaces, there is what we call free gas. So even in those shales, if I was a geologist and I knew that there were fracture swarms on one property that go through that shale, if I drill perpendicular to those fractures, I might be able to steal 20% of the gas on the neighboring property if I hit those fractures right. So although drainage issues, compulsory integrations aren't as important in tight shales, it doesn't mean that you can't have drainage even within those. So geologically, again, we need to go back to the scientists on that one, because no blanket statements cover everything in this business.
I can ask you to comment about, there's a Cunningham case in which it was a condemnation for storage, and when, kind of like what we were talking about earlier at FERC. And normally the gas is dissipated over a period of time, except one well, normally it was in Oriskany, 4 years and the wells were dry. But one well lasted 29 years and was still growing strong. And it was in the same exact formation, same depth.
Probably hit a fracture zone.
That's exactly what happened. They
I've
hit a
seen-
fracture zone, and this well, which was in an area that normally is very quickly dissipated, went on because it was being fed by a lower formation. So, and he'll tell you, nothing's uniform under the earth.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I've seen you guys where I've worked as an environmental geologist where there was an ash disposal lagoon in Pennsylvania. You know, after we burn our coal, we take the ash that has heavy metals and trace amounts of heavy metals and radioactive material, just like we claim that the frac fluid has. Well, we do that and we create it every day. And we put it in these lagoons. And they're up on the top of the mountains. And we've had known for a long time that for this particular company I work for, that it's been leaching into the ground and contaminating nearby wells. So typically what the company does is it goes out and buys more and more land from the farmers, just shut them off. But what happened was, it was interesting, because this pond was up here, and then there was a river, and then there was a house over here, and somehow this house, well, was affected, but houses right next to it weren't.
Because rivers.
And we were like, typically, contamination doesn't jump over rivers. But what we found out, what was happening is the pollution was going down and seeping into the ground and hitting fractures. And they were following the fractures and then coming up and hitting us well. So fractures, guys, hard to make any call on them. You got to have a lot of data. That's why they go out and send out the seismologists and the geophysicists to take the seismic, because it's very complicated.